All right, good morning and welcome to the March 17th, 2021 meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. I'm Jill Barnett, the General Manager at Lextran. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Beshear's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors will be held via live video teleconference pursuant to Senate 150, signed by the Governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. And with that, I will turn it over to the Chairman of the Board of Directors, Christian Motley.
Thanks, Jill. Good morning, everybody. I'll get started by just quickly calling the roll. If you could give me a shout or a thumbs up, let us know we got everybody on. Adrian.
Here I am.
I see Adrian. Harding.
Right here.
I see Rick.
Here.
Jamie.
Here.
And George.
Here.
Did I miss anybody? Great. So yes, we'll call the meeting to order. I will start by asking if there's any comment on agenda items. Any public comment? If not, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Does anybody have any questions about or adjustments to the February minutes? If not, we'll entertain a motion to approve.
George, motion to approve.
Is there a second?
Harding, second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? That motion carries. Not a lot for the chair's report. I did want to name, I got the thumbs up from Nikki that the RFP for the management contract did go out. Thanks to the team who's helping us review that document. George, Jamie, Adrian, I don't know if y'all want to share any thoughts on that process. Does anybody have any questions? That's my only big update. When now I don't have the calendar in front of me. Is Nikki on?
Yes, I'm here.
Just thinking about when we start to expect to see those back. What was the deadline to see those?
Proposals are due. Proposals are due June the 4th.
June the 4th.
Mm-hmm.
So more soon on that. That's my only update in the chair's report. If it's okay, we'll move on to the presentation on the transit center.
All right. So today we have an update for you on some of the work that has been underway at our downtown transit center as part of the Greater Town Branch Commons project. The downtown transit center, if you haven't been there, is where the majority of our routes intersect and come in where passengers transfer. So you may recall back in 2015, we received a TAP award, that stands for Transportation Alternatives Program, grant award in conjunction with LFUCG. And the purpose of that was intended to help fund improvements to the exterior of the transit center. Back in 2019, we engaged with Kersey & Kersey, an architecture and engineering firm, to assist with some of the design and consultation on both the exterior as well as the interior of the transit center, should that be a project that we're able to fund in the future. Fred is going to provide you with a little more details as he gets into the bulk of the deck today. Fred has worked closely with Kersey & Kersey, sort of our internal project manager, but I wanted to give you a little background on the project before he got started. So Fred, if you are ready,
awesome.
Take it away.
Thank you, Jill. So to get started, we always like to start with our mission. We serve people in our community with mobility solutions, and I think this project is especially important, and it's very exciting to me to work on, and how that feeds into the mission of serving people, and that's not only customers, but that's also employees and the community at large. This is a really, really cool project that I'm happy to be able to share with you today. And as Jill mentioned, we're going to start with a timeline of work that we've done to get to this point. And really the genesis of the whole thing is that Transportation Alternatives Program grant award in 2015. We did a community forum to solicit feedback from the public specifically on the transit center in 2016. We did a Kaboom Play Anywhere installation, and that was some interactive games and artwork to make the space a little more lively. We knew that we needed to do some reconfiguration of bay assignments. This was that goes along with the town branch project. We did the first step towards that in 2017. We did also in 2017 an art installation on columns. So in this lower picture, you see the yellow and green and blue column painting. That was part of an art installation that we did in 2017. In 2018, we did a larger branding update. So we rebranded, we got a new logo, a new color scheme, and we took that opportunity to do some updates on public documents and graphics that we had downtown. And then that sort of led into 2019. As Jill mentioned, we began work with Kersey and Kersey to do the design work, and we really took the function of the transit center comprehensively. We looked at not only the operations, but we've looked at how people use the space, how our employees use the space, both internally and externally. Lastly, in 2020, we did the final reconfiguration of bay assignments ahead of the town branch project to make sure that we are ready when the construction moves through our area. So to get us to think about design in the transit center and how it's used, let's start with the way that the transit center is currently. And there's this infamous quote from our 2015 comprehensive operations analysis that the transit center can be described as utilitarian. It sort of functions only in the transit operations world, and there's opportunities there to bring that up to be a more personal interaction, and that's something that we took with us in the design phase. The interactions that we have not only with customers but with employees and customers interacting with each other certainly are hindered by noise and other environmental factors. There's engines rumbling and exhaust, and it's not always a place where you can have a pleasant interaction with someone else. The customer service workspace is very narrow and crowded. I've got a picture of that to show you a little later on. We lack real-time information in this space, and that is something that the industry has shown to be very popular amongst customers. And to be able to have some comfort in knowing when your bus is supposed to be there or when your bus is supposed to leave has been shown to be helpful at other agencies. Our wayfinding is a little disjointed, and that goes back to the bay reconfigurations. We wanted to take a step back and think about how we can do some placemaking and make wayfinding a little more purposeful and helpful. Our customer amenities and waiting areas are in need of an update. The employee break room, I've got a picture of that in a moment as well, is a little bit cramped for space. So again, we reimagine the transit center comprehensively. That's customers, that's employees, that's operations, and to think about how we could design this space to be better for everyone. So we have looked at it interior and exterior. The scope of that exterior work is to install truncated domes along the platform edge, to install real-time bus information displays along the platform, to think about wayfinding and placemaking at each bus bay, to do some lighting updating and cleaning and painting. The interior innovation, so that design work has gone along with the exterior project, is to create a single centralized customer waiting room, to improve Lextran customer service workspace, to create a larger and updated break room for employees. We've created a small bodega, which is something that we've never had here at Lextran, and then to do some mechanical, electrical, and plumbing updates that are needed as well. So we're going to take this sort of scope, and we're going to walk through some of the existing conditions of the transit center and see how it's all going to fit together. So this is a picture of bays 5 through 7. So immediately as you enter the transit center from Vine Street, so sort of from right to left, the yellow that you see is paint, and that would be replaced with the truncated domes. The squares that you see along the platform, those are truncated domes currently. So we're going to replace all that with a truncated dome, do some curb repair work, and then think about how each of these bays, and when I say a bay, you can sort of see a cut in the curb or an angle in the curb, and that is what when I say bay, that's what I'm talking about. How can, we have routes that are scheduled to be in specific bays at specific times. How can we use that to create a place in a wayfinding program so it's easier to find your way from one transfer to another? This is a picture of the west customer waiting room. There's a customer waiting room on either side of the the customer service windows. And you see sort of immediately, at least that catches my eyes, the lighting needs a little bit of work. It's kind of dim and dark, and the opportunity here for some cleaning and some painting. So that's largely the scope of the exterior and some renderings of what that might look like. As you know, we see on the sort of the bus side of the platform, we have static bay numbers, so 7654321 that you see down the platform, that yellow strip of truncated domes along the platform edge. And then on the customer side, we see the real-time arrival departure screens. It's sort of a blank palette or blank canvas that we're showing today that we could build in some placemaking and some wayfinding, other opportunities for colors and different sorts of things, different sorts of art installations, and then improvement of customer amenities. So we see a bench there and other things that we could place to make the space a little more comfortable. And then so the more the comprehensive program here is to think about, so this is the customer service window, so we're under the MLK bridge, and it creates a bit of a choke point. We have customers who are waiting in line to speak to a representative. We have a bus there that's idling, so it's noisy. People waiting to board the bus, and then we have people, pedestrians making the movement from one side of the transit center to the other to make their transfer. So there's a bit of friction that's created there. So part of the design work is to take this this friction and move it indoors to clean up the space, to have a better pedestrian flow, and to allow us to deliver to customers a better transaction, a better interaction. And also this idea that we thought it would be kind of cool to have a bodega, so a place that customers can run in and grab a newspaper or a snack or something as they're waiting on their bus to depart. So this is a mock-up of the interior, and just to sort of walk through what everything we're seeing is. On this side is the platform side, so we see the glass, the entrance to the customer waiting room. The back side is the parking garage, and then to go through the elements, we have employee restrooms, and we're going in this design. We have 3 employee restrooms where we currently have 2. We'll talk about that more in a moment as well. A larger employee break room that offers a little bit more functional space and movement and flow. Customer workspace that is a little more open, that faces into the passenger or customer waiting area. And then we have public restrooms, and then the bodega. So that is the program as it stands at the moment. And to get into a little bit more detail, the design here is to be productive for our staff and engaging for the public. So the top picture is the current customer service workspace. You see it's quite narrow, quite cramped. It was a challenge under social distancing to make sure that we had, we kept everyone safe and could still deliver the customer service that we need to. The bottom picture is the customer waiting room as it is now. There's not much in there in terms of amenities. And we don't have eyes on the customer waiting room, so sometimes it's hard to know when we need to request maintenance, or we have an opportunity here if we merge these 2 functions and spaces together that we can provide more security, and we feel that we can provide a better experience for customers. So also thinking about employees, the top 2 pictures are the current employee break room. It's very narrow. There's not a lot of room. Again, in time of social distancing, it was very difficult to make sure everybody could take a break and spread out at the same time. We see a electrical box that gets at the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing upgrades that are needed. The rendering on the bottom is what the design looks like currently. It's a larger, more functional space for employees to take their break. We would get an additional restroom, which is important because there's typically a 10-minute layover, and all the buses come in at the same time. So everyone's sort of making the bathroom rush at the same time. So adding a little bit more capacity there would definitely be a benefit to our employees. So I want to leave us here on this mock-up for questions. So the next steps that we're looking at is to keep soliciting input from this board for others to make sure that we have design and the components in here that we need to have, and then to really dig down and work through the budget issues and come up with a path forward. So Cheryl Kersey of Kersey Architects is online with us this morning. If you have any questions of me or about the design, we're happy to take those now.
Thanks for this is Harding. Sorry, go ahead, Adrian.
No, please, Harding, go ahead.
I had an operational question first for you, Fred. Is a bodega something that would be internally managed by Lextran, or would that just be space rented to a tenant?
I think we could go either way with it. We're going to see if, as this shakes out, we want the bodega to stay, but we're going to make sure that it's going to stay before we get into how the management of that would function. So that's still sort of a to be determined.
Okay.
Harding, a number of agencies like ours that do something like this at either their transfer center or some other public space, often they will issue a request for proposals for companies to help manage that. Companies that where a bodega or small convenience store is their expertise. Transit's our expertise, so we would probably leave that to them. But that's not a factor that we've really nailed down yet.
I would agree with that approach, Jill. Thanks.
So this is Adrienne now. The only feedback, I think it's fantastic to have some focus on employee comfort and accommodations here. So I'm happy to see that. Commend the idea of creating better traffic flow on the street side of the bays and bringing the waiting area in. The only comment I would have is that if we would want a bodega to be successful, maybe not to have people have to walk between the bathrooms to get to it, just because that's just an aesthetic thing that people may not like. So, in terms of design, maybe if the bathrooms were lined up against the back wall and the seating was rearranged in a different way so that the access to the bodega was a little more open, and that would also help the bodega be more successful, I think, than having it down a corridor where you have to walk past the bathrooms.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we'll take that. Certainly take that feedback. Thank you.
How much time do employees or drivers have between runs for a break period?
Typically, it's 10 minutes between when the bus arrives and departs. Now that is what we shoot for. Traffic considerations. You could be there a few minutes early. You could be there a few minutes late, but that is typically what we try to provide.
I have a quick question, Fred. We had previously discussed some sort of partnership with Greyhound, and there was some discussion about them taking up physical space at the downtown transit center. Is this designed with that in mind? Is that something that's still on the table?
It is designed with them in mind, and it's still on the table. The difference now is we have been talking about they wouldn't have a bay on the Vine Street side. They would be staging on the High Street side. So that operationally changed the way that they interact with us, but certainly that is still that's still on the table. We're still working through that.
And what I'm thinking specifically about was the potential of having, and I could be incorrect, but having someone something that I guess like a sales desk.
Mm-hmm.
Would that just be next? Would they just be in the same space that we're looking at where our customer service workspace would be?
They could. One model they described to us as well was that sometimes they have an agency like ours function as their agent, where basically our employees would have the ability to sell their tickets or passes, for a fee. So that was one model they presented to us. Another model was actually having a member of their staff or a standalone station in our transit center.
And so if that would be the case, would we have to build anything either or construct something here or on the High Street side to accommodate that?
I don't think so. I think we would I think so we have buses, Adrian, on that use the High Street location now. And basically the bus parking is up there, as well as a few transit shelters for passengers to wait if they have a short wait. For those that might have a longer wait, they do come down to the Vine Street side and wait in some of our customer service waiting areas, or use the use the facilities. So we wouldn't plan to build anything in addition. They would use what we have currently.
Okay. Another question I had was about the effect of the construction on the parking structure supports that are above. You know, did we factor in any effect that it may have on that and inspections and things of that nature? I'm sure you understand why I'm asking.
We did not touch anything structural. I mean, that was part of the limits of the envelope that we're working in. So the sides, these are elevator shafts. So on either side, that framed the space that we're working in, and then there's 2 structural columns that remain on the interior.
Okay.
So we did not make any changes to any of the structural elements of the transit center.
Okay.
2 questions. Adrian brought up a point that I should know, but I don't. The parking garage behind that's adjacent to us is not a Lextran facility. Is that right? Is that a Lex Park facility?
That's
correct.
correct.
And then can you go back to the exterior rendering? And I know we had Brandy present a while ago. How will this be impacted by is the stoplight on Vine Street still planned?
Yes, the crosswalks.
Yes. Is it a crosswalk and a stoplight, or just a crosswalk?
It'll be both. And that is part of the bay assignment reconfiguration, because we were using the space where that crosswalk will be constructed as staging of a vehicle, so we had to move that, and that's what we went through last year, and we are ready for that to happen now.
As a reminder, what's the timeline on that? Now that we see the road being tore up.
Yeah, they are working in the zone at the moment. We've not, as far as I know, got the official date of when that crosswalk is going to be under construction, but I imagine it to be fairly soon.
They seem to have gotten to our area about, Fred, would you say 2 to 3 weeks sooner than we originally anticipated?
Yes.
And is that taking out, I forget, is that taking out a lane of Vine Street, that construction, or will a lane be going back?
No, it's narrowed some lanes, and so there's still going to be the same number of lanes. They'll just be a little more narrow.
They're like 10-foot lanes, Jamie. They're tight. So it's traffic calming, because I drive there every day. I have a couple of questions. One, because I don't know this, but on the truncated domes leading to a curb drop off, is that typical in ADA compliance?
In this space, we don't want anyone to go from the platform into the roadway. So the truncated dome is the warning that, something is changing. You need to wait and board through the ramps, the bus ramps, not any physical ramp on the platform.
Yeah. And on the interior, where did you pick up the space from?
So there's a vestibule that's entering the transit center. Currently, we have the 2 waiting rooms on either side. Each of those 2 waiting rooms has 2 bathrooms and 2 janitorial closets. There is an extra bit of space in the customer service area that is we're using it as almost like a storage space. And then the configuration of how the current employee break room is. Maybe I can use this picture to give a little better explanation. So behind this wall, there is a long corridor that leads to an office and 2 bathrooms. There's just lots of little nooks and crannies in this place. Once we broke it all apart, we had the extra room to fill things back in. It's just a more efficient use of the space that's there.
So am I correct, Fred, in saying we have not technically added any square footage to the total footprint, but we have reconfigured all of the space as a whole? Is that an
That's
accurate statement?
That's correct. It is between the two, like I said, the elevator shafts, that's what we used as the envelope for the redesign. And then of course the front of the building and the back of the building as it's currently constructed.
So show me on this picture where the elevator shafts are. They're on the outsides.
Yeah, they're on either side.
Okay. And then are the public restrooms physically there now, or are they in a different place now?
They're in a similar place, but there was a little bit of tweaking of a wet wall. I think Cheryl might be able to touch on that a little better than I can, but they're close to the same spot, but not exactly.
Some of them. Is that correct? On the right-hand side, the public restrooms are there currently, but currently there are 2 passenger areas where there is a single restroom. So the way we've reconfigured the space moves some of them. Is that fair?
Correct. That's correct. Yeah, they've all been tweaked and moved a bit. But right now they're on each end on the other sides of the customer service. So
thank you, Cheryl.
This is Harding again. This project obviously involves, some fairly specific wayfinding pieces outside, some more conventional construction inside. And I may be getting way ahead of myself, but how do you anticipate, and some of this is just being new on the board and not knowing how we handle these things, how would we anticipate bidding or procuring the different components for this work?
Do you mean with the wayfinding or just overall?
Like, would that be all one package that would be bid to a general contractor, or do you anticipate special bid packages for wayfinding, for general construction, et cetera?
I'll probably let Cheryl say more of this, but I will add, sometimes we find that when some parts are broken out of a really big project, that gives some smaller firms the opportunity to do something that might be a DBE or an MBE, might be local. Sometimes it gives them some additional opportunity. Because Cheryl is the expert here, I will let her tell you maybe how she's done this in the past, and we can kind of go from there.
So we're going to have a procurement conversation tomorrow afternoon, as a matter of fact. Typically, we would bid this. We would put this as one large package, but we would have requirements. When we did a lot of work for TARC, we would bid it as one large package and then have percentages requirements for DBE participation. So different components of the construction will give those firms opportunities to provide services and bid. The only thing that may be pulled out a little bit differently, and we've got to have some more conversation, is some of the relationships that are with the security and access control contract that they have now. So that might be the only thing that we can think of right now that might be separate. But like I said, we're having those conversations tomorrow. But the intention would be one large package.
What is the nature of the access control contract?
We have, it's Schiller Hardware, and they were under contract for 5 years. They provide our facility cameras, door locks, access control. They've done a little bit of work, networking work for us. So yeah, they've done really, really good work so far. So I think we've been fairly pleased with them.
But there is an existing contract, Harding, to answer that question, that serves both spaces.
And that sounds like that's a continuing, maintenance contract primarily. So, but would they be required to be the access control subcontractor on this? Am I hearing that correctly?
I would think so, because they have the knowledge of our networking. to make sure that the cameras are networked correctly, and we're feeding on the same platform that we have here at Loudon.
Any other questions here?
My only other question, but what I heard is we don't have that number yet, is budget. That what I'm hearing, Fred and Jill, is that still has to be worked out. We don't have a budget yet for this, but there has been some money in the past through a grant allocated to this.
Correct. We are still, I guess it would be fair to say we're still sharpening pencils and determining what some of these things could look like. So we would come back to you with that. Fred, do you have anything to add there?
I think that's where we stand.
All right. Well, thank you all for entertaining this update, and thank you, Fred and Cheryl, for helping walk through it.
Thanks, Fred and Cheryl.
Thank you all.
Yeah, with that, let's move to the performance report.
All right. Before we get the performance report fully on the screen and get fully into that, a couple of things that I wanted to share before we go through all the KPIs. Tomorrow is Transit Driver Appreciation Day. So we are excited about that. We have a few things planned. I don't want to share what all of those things are right now and spoil the fun for our drivers and employees, but that is tomorrow. So if you see an operator or you see a Lextran employee out in the community, say hello and say thank you. If you see something on social media, please share that for us. We would greatly appreciate it. So I wanted to share about that. I also wanted to touch on the American Rescue Plan that President Biden recently signed. Included in that plan was $30.5 billion for transit. That is countrywide. I will say we anticipate an apportionment, but we are awaiting additional information from FTA. We don't have any number at this point, but that is something APTA has lobbied hard for in Washington, D.C. So if or when we have an update related to that, we will share that information with the board. Sorry. I will now give the control back to Fred Combs for the presentation of our KPIs and Lextran monthly performance report.
Thanks, Jill. So yeah, February was a very interesting month. Let's make sure I've got control here. I want to skip the mission statement. Again, we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. So the month of February, we honored Rosa Parks, Claudette Colvin, Aurelia Browder, Mary Louise Smith, and Susan McDonald, who were involved in ending racial segregation on public transit in the United States. We had an additional 184 trust in transit pledges in February, bringing the total to 487. And then that pesky snow. We had some serious service impacts due to winter weather. We had 6 weekdays that were on snow plan, and one day we started with a 2-hour service delay. If I remember right, we were sort of in the thick of that when we were talking last month. Again, we had no preventable accidents or employee injuries due to that winter weather event, so that is a very, very positive thing to share. Unfortunately, that winter weather event did have an impact on our ridership. So the average weekday ridership in February on those days with snow plan was just about 5,800, which was down from 8,600 on the days for which we offered normal service. So we're going to see that impact in ridership.
Fred?
Yes, sir.
Let me go back to the previous slide. I just want to make sure to highlight
sure.
one thing. A couple of years ago, and correct me if I'm wrong, Lextran folks, a couple of years ago, this is in part for new board members, Lextran started partnering with the library around this focus during Black History Month, and particularly around, is it the birthday of Rosa Parks, I believe? But I think in the previous year, it was just Rosa Parks.
That is correct.
And having a front seat dedicated to her at the front of the bus, on each bus, with a QR code, and folks could hover their phones over this QR code and have access to books and resources that were available at the library. This year, it expanded to honor these multiple women, which I just think is really cool. So still that opportunity to access additional resources. We've partnered with the library in a couple of different ways, and I just think this is a really cool one. So I just wanted to make sure to highlight that. I was watching social media and you know, people were taking pictures and sharing on Twitter and just commending Lextran for this. And I think it's a great thing that we do each year. I hope we continue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry, Fred.
Oh, no worries. So to jump into the ridership, we expect to see an increase in ridership, or at least traditionally we've seen from December all the way through April. Sort of the slow getting to one of the two peaks of the year, and that is of course related to campus. This year, being the pandemic and especially that winter weather in February, you see we didn't quite get the bump between January and February that we would normally expect. And now we're starting to really see the ridership impact across a year. We're almost a year away from, you know, the shutdown due to the pandemic. So we hope that March is going to be a little stronger. Again, my 75 and sunny promise. Maybe we'll try that again next month. So we're hoping that March is going to be a little more of a bounce back than what February was, because we did see that impact of the snow and the winter weather. Same story with paratransit ridership. That February took a bit of a hit, and that we suspect is related to snow as well. Looking at both paratransit and fixed route in terms of change relative to monthly average, we've hit about 50% on fixed route. So we've taken a little bit of a step back. Again, we hope that a lot of that is due to the winter weather and that we're going to see a little more of a stronger March. So hopefully there's a bit better news coming next month. And again, in paratransit, it also took a little bit of a hit, we think, due to the weather.
Fred, before you move on, I wanted to make a quick comment about paratransit ridership. A couple of months ago, there was a question, and I can't recall who asked the question, about some paratransit ridership and whether or not it was as we had expected. And I later realized that some members of the board may have thought that paratransit is only for medical trips. And that is not the case. A lot of those trips are in fact medical, but paratransit, a rider can use that service to go anywhere that the regular fixed route Lextran bus would take them. They would simply be eligible to use paratransit because their disability might prevent them from using the regular fixed route bus. So I did want to offer that point of clarification with regard to the ridership. That's why it's very closely mimics the flow that we see on the fixed route.
Fred, I've got a quick comment. When you say it's probably due to the snow, and it probably is, but can we not just verify that and ask for, you know, like the daily counts during that snow period?
And that is this for fixed route. That's where we saw that average. We can certainly do that for paratransit as well. So,
because the other thing that we never look at is, well, what snow days do we have last year? Because we may have had some in February last year too.
Yeah, that's right.
Fred, we cannot see the ridership slide.
I think Fred's trying to draw attention to the hard numbers here, 5788 versus 8604.
Or what can you see?
It now went back through to a percent change relatively to monthly average, but it was stuck on the QR code civil rights slide for a moment.
Okay. Well, let me see if I can jump to the system productivity.
Jill, on the paratransit,
Yes.
I guess we're following that 3/4 mile rule, or we're only picking up and delivering within 3/4 of, what is it, 1/4 of a mile?
You're correct on the 3/4 mile. That's the federal standard. However, we do offer service countywide with paratransit.
Okay, I was going to ask because I just want to make sure I understood.
We do.
And, is it at the same fee?
Uh,
25?
there's a slight premium outside the 3/4 mile. So a regular paratransit trip is $1, $1.60. And if you are outside the 3/4 mile, it's the full $2. There's not a ton of those trips, but that is the price difference.
Is it worth fooling with? A differential?
Mhm.
Just asking. I mean, that's probably a question for another time.
Sure, but thank you.
Yeah.
That's good feedback.
Yeah.
Fred, let me
And-
ask one question before you move on to
Sure.
when we look at these trend line graphs, the monthly average, what period of time is that averaged over? I just know we're coming up on a year, and if this is a year over year average, we're all of a sudden going to be seeing that big dip be part of our monthly average, and I don't think that's going to give us an accurate read. So is that over 5 years? Is that over what period of time is that over?
I believe we have the last 4 years in each of these, and you're correct. Moving forward, we're going to see this gray line start to trend down because of the impact that we've had over the last year.
Thank you.
Fred, for trending wise, do we want to separate that out and say this is our pre-COVID numbers and this is our averaging in the COVID year?
We certainly can. I mean, I can
That would make sense to me.
Yeah, we will absolutely, we'll add that for next month. We will have sort of we can have the same, what we would have expected before the pandemic. We can have the, what we've observed during the past year of the pandemic, and then we can have the monthly moving forward. So we can certainly add that.
And then I think, Fred, something you said was really interesting last month is that this is going to be a very gradual return to that pre-COVID numbers. Maybe we're looking at 1 year, 2 year, 3 year, but hasn't been growing as fast as it did April, May, June. It looks like it's flattened out June, July through February. So I don't know how much we continue to look at. Is there just a new number of ridership?
That is something that the industry, not only the transit, but the urban planning industry is really watching closely. And as during the August, September meetings, we were thinking, well, this might be more of a snapback. They talk about a snapback in the economy, that it's really just going to pop back open and things are going to be like it always has been once we, cross certain thresholds, be it vaccinations or, economies opening back up. But we now have some evidence, and I think I mentioned last month that there was a survey in Utah that, leads us to believe that maybe it won't snap quite as quickly as what we had hoped. So it's something that we keep watching, and we're hopeful, and we do other exciting things to bring the attention back that transit is safe, that we're still here for everyone, and when people are ready to start riding again, we're ready to have them.
Yeah, or we also talked too about it could be a permanent decline, ridership, or a very, very, very long time, which I think that's why it's important, as was mentioned as our baseline. We should continue to use these 4 years that you have on the dark line as a baseline to compare.
We will certainly have something that reflects this conversation next month that we can track moving forward. In terms of system productivity, it is again the same conversation that we've had over the past few months, and even this morning as well. Ridership's down, productivity is down. That's essentially the same story across the board between fixed route and paratransit. Our safety indicators, however, look pretty good. Certainly no preventable accidents on paratransit for the month of February. That is always an exciting point to mention. And then we had one clarification or correction from the board packet on maintenance, which was miles between roll calls. I think the board packet had it pulled an incorrect number of miles to do that formula. So this is the corrected version at just over 7,500 miles between roll calls. Our preventive maintenance inspection streak is still intact at 356 for this fiscal year. So we're happy to share that news as well. And then I wanted to share with you this morning some proposed May service improvements that have been working on over the past couple of months. The big one would be the Route 12. There's a couple of tweaks. One would be the outbound serving Antique Drive that is behind Apollo Pizza. There's the new senior housing development there. We would be able to serve that on the outbound. And then on the inbound, pick up the new VA affordable housing development. This is near BCTC's Leestown campus, and also get better service to the DMV that's moved over in that area as well. We've got some minor schedule tweaks for routes 2, 3, 6, 8, 9, and 11. And then we will be thinking about resuming service to the Bluegrass Airport in Keeneland. And we would do that through Route 8. And then resume service on Route 24, Old Frankfort Pike. So that would get us back to something similar to what we were before the pandemic.
Fred, can you remind, is Route 12 the one we talked about? You said it's connected to that development.
Route 12 is Leestown Road, and it is, yes, it's the one that's going to go to the senior housing development that is on Antique Drive. And that's
so
that
shopping from Leestown Road to that street right behind.
Yes.
Right. I just want to highlight, I mean, of course, this is what we do every day, but just the example of our transit following or working alongside development, I just think is something worth highlighting. Thank you.
We've had a lot of interest we've had a lot of interest in that, in serving that area too. And I think you have heard some of that feedback as well, Christian. So glad we're able to serve that area.
I also think that's near one of our other board members' neighborhoods. So if you ever want to hop on Route 12, Jamie.
That is correct.
So along with the service improvements, I have the timeline.
One quick question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
To back up, what happens to the inbound stop along Leestown Road? Does that shift to Antique Drive as well, or does that stay on the other side of Leestown?
We have in the current proposal, it will stay on Leestown. But we are opening this up to public comment and public feedback, and we will see if there is a desire from the public to move that over as well. But as we have currently proposed, we feel that it's best to stay on Leestown.
Yeah, I recognize that limiting our left turns is probably helpful, but if we're really dedicated to serving that senior housing development, serving it in both ways seems like the smart thing to do.
And so we have a timeline for input. We're going to open public comment and run that through Monday, April 5th. There's going to be a virtual public meeting on March 31st. Our final service improvements, inclusive of the feedback that we get, will be presented to you at next month's meeting. Should everything go well, and these are things that we want to move forward on, these improvements will go into effect on May the 16th. And for anyone who might be watching or checking this video out later, these are some ways that you can submit your comment. Email at info@lextran.com. We're going to have a form set up on the website. Also, this information will be posted on the website in more detail. We'll set up a voicemail box at 859-244-2039 where you can leave comment. Any of our social media accounts, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Everyone's certainly welcome to join our public meeting on March 31st. And we'll also have service improvements cards with customer service representatives at the transit center. So if anyone else would like to have comment, feel free to reach out to us. And that is the performance report for February. Happy to take any questions or pass it over to Nikki for financials.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you, Fred.
Thanks, Fred.
Thanks.
Have two comments.
Oh,
I hear George and I think Jamie.
y'all let George go first.
Right.
All right, two comments on what got sent in the board packet, the on-time performance. And I know that it spiked in a good way when traffic was reduced because of the pandemic. I don't know about everybody else's traffic flow, but the streets that I ride now, it seems like there's a lot more traffic than there was, and you've been able to maintain that. That was one thing that always bothered me on here was our on-time performance, because I mean, to me, that almost seems like the most important thing that we can do is be on time, so that people can rely on us to get to where they need to be on time. So if we can pay really close attention to that and try to keep it in the the mid 90s where it is now versus dipping back in the 80s, I think that'd be good. And I mean, it's interesting on the paratransit side. I mean, to me, that seems more like a scheduled event. And, for them to have been below 90, it was just hard for me to understand that. And, now that they're almost at 95, I think that's probably good targets for that metric as well. And then on past boarding, does that mean that people are at the bus stop and the bus stop drives past it? Or the bus drives past it?
Yes.
So that's a number that has always bothered me. I mean, one reason because some people at UK would let me know when that happened to them, but another reason. I mean, what can be more frustrating than to being somewhere supposedly on time? So let's assume that of all the people that voiced that complaint, there's at least probably half of them that were really there on time, and maybe most of them were really there on time, and then to have the bus go by. And I know some of the reasons in the past had to do with whatever you call your board, where you pick up a route that you're not normally on, being
yes, the extra board, an extra board driver.
Yeah. So, that driver maybe not being familiar with exactly where the stops are, but gosh, with technology, there ought to be something to help the driver know that he's supposed to stop. And anyway, that's my 2 cents on that one. So I would love to see that number go down drastically, especially from where it is now.
Okay. Thank you for that, George.
And I had 2 questions from the board packet. One was, I saw there were 2 we already talked about one, but 2 groundbreaking big developments, the Hamburg Cowgill property, which I believe is the Baptist Health new campus, and the Coldstream property. Are those developments that already have routes, or the routes planned when those developments are finished?
So the Coldstream groundbreaking did take place, as we said earlier. The meeting we had with Hamburg and Cowgill was not specific to the Baptist development, but I guess what's immediately adjacent to that. Fred and I talked with the developer, and there is not a route that currently serves that area. We recognize that Baptist and some of those other places will probably be major generators of trips, either folks going there or perhaps employees that live in the apartments around there going to elsewhere in town. So we were glad to have that conversation early on before they've started moving dirt, and have people living there and then tell us, we need you here. So we were very glad to have that early on to know what they're thinking and to get that on our radar so that we can plan what adjustments will need to be made, because that is an area that we see needing to serve better. There is currently some service at Coldstream through Route 4 right now.
And we have had conversations with the Baptist Health developer team of developers as well.
Yes, thank you. Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. And then the other thing is, I saw there were 10 open positions in operations. I didn't know if that was normal, above average. I know you had sent an article about some bus driver shortages. Is that a number to be concerned with, that many bus driver openings? Or is that average?
That's perhaps a little higher than average. in terms of it being abnormal in the industry or even in Kentucky, it's not, because all of the transit agencies are somewhat facing the same thing. We are doing a little bit better than our other large agency friends in Kentucky. With we get the work out the door most days. 100%. You know, the other agencies have a lot of missed trips based on what I've heard reported lately. We are all having trouble recruiting people that want to do this frontline work, as well as people who are able to pass all of our screening process, as far as background checks, drug and alcohol screening, and things of that nature. So we actually had a discussion in our staff meeting yesterday about recruiting drivers and some of the creative things that other agencies in the country are doing to bring operators in the door.
Thank you.
All right, are there any other questions on the performance report? Hearing none, I will turn it over to our Director of Finance, Nikki Falkenberry, to go through our financials.
Good morning, everyone. We have the February balance sheet here. As you'll notice, we mentioned the last couple months, the operating cash is a little higher than normal because of our CARES funding that we received, and we're very thankful for that. You will also notice on the balance sheet that the loan was paid off. We paid the loan off on February 10th, and it was right at 4.2 million. And so that will save us some interest money because it was, we still had another 5 years on the loan. So if there are any questions on the balance sheet, I'll be glad to answer them. If not, I'll move on to the revenue and expenses. Okay, here's our revenue expenses for February. Our property taxes, we're very pleased. We weren't sure about what the impact of 2020 would be with the timing of the tax payments, but we are actually at this point have received a little more than we did this time last year. And we also have our passenger revenue there for February that's starting to come back a little bit. Our federal funds are higher than budgeted, again, due to the receiving. We drew down some of the CARES Act money in February. We are under budget in most areas except materials and supplies. And as I mentioned in the past few months, that's due to extra cleaning supplies, extra PPE, and some of our bus parts and building supplies and things like that. That's timing issues. Our paratransit expenses are still under budget. They've picked up some with some of the service returning, but they're still under budget. So we're very, very pleased at this point for this time of the year. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. Okay, no questions. I'll turn it back over. Oh, go ahead.
Nikki, I just had one question. And I see that on state funds, is there any sense or forecast? I'm assuming since there's so much federal funds coming in, the state funding is giving less funds or no funds. Is there any conversations on what their funds look like long term?
At this point, we did request state funds back in the fall like we do usually, but we have not received any. We usually do receive those by now if we were going to receive any. So I don't really look for any other ones to come at this point. But you know, things could always change. But I don't look for any in this fiscal year.
And there's some conversations when there's more federal funds, there's less state funds, or there's more state funds when there are less federal funds. You see them try to balance each other out. So I didn't know if there was an overall conversation on what state funds are going to look like for the next couple of years.
Yeah, usually if we get more of the federal funds, then the state funds usually are lower. I know they're focusing a lot on some of the rural areas that have had a hard time during the pandemic. So, yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? Okay, I'll turn it back over to you, Jill.
All right. Let's go back to the agenda. Thank you for that, Nikki, and thank you Fred, I appreciate you guys very much. The next item on our agenda is a resolution 2021-04, approval of the resident assistant general manager. As you know, the assistant general manager position has been available for several months following the transition, my transition from assistant general manager to GM. Thank you, board. I appreciate that. And today we have a resolution for Mr. Byron Robinson as Lextran's resident assistant general manager. He is being submitted and recommended by Transdev, the contracted management services company. When I sent along your board packet, I did provide his resume to you. I did not include that in the board packet because I knew that would get posted on the internet pretty quickly. Mr. Robinson is currently employed with a Transdev competitor, and his offer is contingent upon the board's approval. So I didn't, not knowing what could happen today, did not want to do anything that might jeopardize his current employment. I have spoken to him on a couple of occasions. There were also some virtual meetings held with Chairman Christian Motley, Vice Chair Adrian, and George Ward, who is the Finance Committee Chair on the board. Byron also met with the Regional Human Resources Director for Transdev, Sheila Talley, and the Regional Vice President, Justin Augustine, who you have all, I believe you have all met or spoken with at some point in the past. So that is the resolution that we have today, Resolution 2021-04, and it would entertain any questions that you might have.
I want to also ask just quickly if Adrian or George want to share anything from conversations. Anything worth noting?
I'm excited to see a new person from outside of Transdev or outside of Transdev and outside of Lextran come in. I mean, it's always good to be able to promote from within if you can, and it's also good to have people from the outside come in because they're bringing in some fresh ideas and some different experiences. And so I'm really looking forward, and I'm sure Jill is looking forward as well to having assistance on the management side.
Yeah, any thoughts, Adrian?
Looks like she shook her head no.
A couple things that I wanted to mention. Like as Jill said, I got a chance to speak with the candidate. But just stepping back from this individual, I just want to highlight, and I guess it's the role of Transdev really in making sure that we had my understanding was that we had Jill, I know you had multiple conversations, but there was a pool of a diverse candidate pool. And I think that's something that we talked about as being a priority going into this process. Of course, it was not, it didn't absolutely have to be a diverse candidate, but I think the fact that it is, I think speaks to just the fact that we had just a really good pool. And I appreciate his experience across departments, but also I believe he was an operator, which I think is just really cool for even folks on the team to see the development and the leadership path. And so excited about what it can mean for the organization, and glad we're here. Anybody have questions? I will entertain a motion.
Amy Rogers makes the motion.
Is there a second?
George, second.
Everyone in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Joseph thumbs. Anyone opposed? Did we get those? I know we did. I did that vote kind of quick. Okay. That motion carries.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you all. Thanks, Jill, for working with Transdev to get through this process.
Absolutely. I believe I just saw a note on chat from Adrian. I believe she's had to step away due to something with work. I noticed that. Yes.
Thanks, Adrian.
Thank you. Okay, so beyond our action items, we had the one resolution this month. We don't have anything to share on old business or, I'm sorry, I skipped over the change order. Sorry about that. We do have a change order report this month. Do you want to add before getting into the details? There is no increase in the total contract cost here, so it's not an increase in monetary value. So for board approval today, this change order is with the American Red Cross, who is our paratransit service provider. And last March 2020, we entered into an agreement with them that Wheels would provide some shadow service for us if that was needed due to some of the capacity restraints and social distancing orders. So that helped us in that we were able to accommodate passengers and not leave them stranded if they were waiting for a trip. And that also helped them as they saw many of their paratransit trips decline due to businesses being closed, people not taking those non-essential trips, and so on and so forth. So that that original change order in March had in March of 2020 had expired. We went ahead and extended that, and as I said, there's no increase in the total contract cost, so that we are just reporting this for information. Excuse me. Thank you. So that was the change order report. As I already said, sorry about that. There's no old business to report today, and I do not believe there is any new business. We have left some of the proposed agenda items on there. We have a COA, Comprehensive Operations Analysis update coming for you in the coming months, so we will be excited to share that with you. And you had requested some information about Green Check, Christian. We are working through some of that. It is time for, I believe, our renewal and how that speaks to some greater sustainability efforts here at Lextran. So working on that and some policy items. There will be some resolutions forthcoming in the next couple of months. I will call attention to the date. We are 1 month away from our 5-year anniversary in this building. But what that means is that many of the original 5-year contracts with outside companies for service agreements and different things of that nature, they're all expiring. So our procurement department is very busy with some procurement. So you may see a number of resolutions coming forth as we work through some of those items. So don't have all of those for you today, but didn't want you to be surprised and think, what is going on? Why are they buying all of this stuff? Beyond that, Chairman, I would ask if there is a need for closed session today.
Yeah, I do want us to make time for closed session if we could. Is there a motion?
Christian, can I ask one unrelated question before we go to closed session?
Sure.
And Jill, I know Lexington's taking a very neighborhood approach, so transit may not have a role here, but I've noticed in other cities, transit has had a role in vaccine distribution and getting that out. Is that something that Lexington has been approached for, or is that the way that Lexington's doing it, not necessarily need a transit approach?
There have been some conversations around some of the different clinics, different pop-up clinics on weekends. So there have been some conversations about that. And some of the first few clinics, I think, were kind of used to gauge demand and gauge what the demand might be. We believe that the way we can best do that here in Lexington is through our paratransit provider, because people will have an appointment for their vaccination, and thus they can make an appointment for their trip. I have kind of been keeping an eye. I shouldn't say I've kind of been. I have been keeping an eye and keeping in touch with paratransit, asking, about trips that are scheduled to Kroger Field or to the various Walgreens sites around some of the mobile clinics that happened on the weekends, as well as the Kentucky Horse Park. There have not been a tremendous number or an overwhelming number of trips scheduled there. So that has been a bit surprising. So that tells me that either people are using fixed routes to get to some of those locations, or they are not having a huge transit need. We do want to be a resource if we can, to help eliminate that transportation barrier that people might have to getting their vaccine. If that's part of the equation, we want to make sure that we can do that in a way that's best effective for them, as well as us. We do have some service that's taking place. It's not on a huge scale, but the health department has set up a mobile site at the Consolidated Baptist Church on Russell Cave Road. So we have provided a little bit of help in that regard through paratransit that we coordinated, but overwhelmingly, there's not, a mass vaccination weekend happening where we could go system wide free trips for those things. That's not to say that won't happen in the future. I've heard some rumors of that in talking with other transit agencies, but we do want to help be a resource for that if we can do so.
Thanks, Jill.
All right.
All right.
Then I think you needed a motion to go into closed session, Christian.
I'll make that motion.
Oh, yeah.
I move the Lextran board to go into closed session pursuant to KRS 61.810E for discussions regarding collective bargaining negotiations between public employers and the employee representatives.
And I ask if Jill, if you and the Director of Finance could stay. So GM and Director of Finance.
All right.
George, second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? All right, we're going to close session.
Okay.
Give me one moment, please.
Yes.
Sure. Was that Fred or Fred?
I've always said he needed to clone himself, but
I took that a little too far, didn't I?
you did.
Only when working virtually can one clone oneself.
True.
We are back.
Well, we have left closed session. No formal action was taken. We've completed the agenda, so if there's another motion to adjourn, I'll entertain that.
So moved.
Starting, I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Great day today. Thank you all
Thank you,
for
board.
spending that time. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Aye.
Bye.